Good morning and welcome to another episode of Islamic Finance Weekly, where we discuss and capture the activities in the non-interest finance market. Housing is important to the development of any society, and it has both economic and welfare effects. Economically, investment in housing contributes to fixed capital formation, employment, and substantial backward and forward linkages with the rest of the economy. The National Development Plan 2021 to 2025 highlights the country's commitment to bridging the housing gap in the country, projecting 1 million houses to be built in Nigeria yearly. Like other forms of financing, residential mortgages can also be financed using either conventional or Islamic financing. Today, the focus of our conversation will be financing Nigeria housing deficit from a Sharia perspective. Joining me this morning on this show is Mr. AbdulMalik Mahdi, Managing Partner, Modern Shelter Systems and Services Limited. Good morning, Mr. AbdulMalik. It is good to have you on the Islamic Finance Weekly to discuss this relevant topic.
Thank you. Good morning, and thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. Let us start the conversation with several policies Nigeria has embarked on in order to provide adequate housing for the teeming population. In spite of government intervention in the industry, there are issues of housing availability, accessibility, and affordability, even without corresponding actions to match the demand. What are the main challenges facing the Nigerian housing sector?
Well, I think Nigerian housing sector is not any different from other sectors in the economy, in that we exist in a country that is going through very difficult financial and economic times. The effect of the COVID-19, the fact that Nigeria is also a mono economy. A lot of things have really gone downhill from 2016 to date. The fact that we don't also manufacture a lot of inputs that we use in housing in Nigeria. We import virtually everything, which is true for other sectors. All these things affect the housing market negatively and have stunted the growth of the housing market. There's also the issue of the deepening of the mortgage market. So when you look at the things from the demand side and the supply side, these two different sections of the market. For the customers that buy houses, there's an issue of purchasing power, because no matter how many you produce or you build, if the people cannot afford it because the prices are too high, and because maybe the mortgages are not there for them to buy these houses, then there's a big challenge. And we have a lot of people living under poverty line. We're thinking of how to feed people in this country. So when you look at the housing deficit of over 20 million, which is growing every year, you have to, it's a major issue. And when you look at from the side of the developers, supply side, it's also schemes where the government comes with policies. The cost of land, the cost of infrastructure, the cost of other building materials are so expensive, that the cost of an ordinary house is beyond the ordinary Nigerian, the reach of the ordinary Nigerian. So beyond maybe the government just giving them for free, it is always very difficult to bridge the gap. So there are a lot of policies that the government has embarked on, through the National Housing Fund, which is under the Federal Mortgage Bank, the Family Home Funds, Nigerian Mortgage Finance Corporation, trying to see how they stimulate the housing market. Social housing or affordable housing, will be available to the common Nigerian. But there are other factors, in the macroeconomy that make this thing virtually impossible at the moment. So we're doing our best. The government is certainly doing their best, but until the macroeconomy itself is fixed, until we start producing building materials in Nigeria, majority of what we use, until we have infrastructure costs that are very, very affordable or provided by government, until we have access to land, this issue will still be a major problem to contend with.
Yes, definitely, Mr. AbdulMalik. The population growth rate, the macroeconomy. One thing government has to do is to provide housing for the people. So When it comes to the real estate sector in Nigeria, one name rings to bell for innovation and timely delivery, which is Modern Shelter. So you are the managing partner to this real estate marketing firm. Share with us how you plan to bridge the housing deficit in the country.
Well, that's a very huge ask, to bridge a housing gap of 20 million. But I mean, our vision at Modern Shelter is actually to help as many people as possible, get on the housing ladder. So yeah, we're doing in our own small space. We're trying to dabble into affordable housing, student housing, mid-income housing, and luxury housing. So something for every sector of the economy, from mortgage brokerage to construction, to actually advocacy. We do a lot of advocacy in this interview. As part of the advocacy, we talk to authorities. We try to propose solutions, to these housing needs. From our experience in the sector, it has not been easy. Right now, as Modern Shelter, since we came into being in 2015, we have been part of different housing projects directly as advisors, financiers, or even the developers of over 10,000 houses, all across the country, from Lagos, Abuja. We're going into Nasarawa now, so we're doing our own bit, to help in terms of, bridging this mammoth figure of 20 million. It's not something that one person or one company can do alone, but we try to ensure that our customers are happy. We try to ensure that we keep our promises to our clients, and the delivery of a house to a customer is not the happiest moment of anybody's life, and it's a feeling that we like creating and recreating. So for us, we're all about creating happiness at Modern Shelter.
All right, this is a good initiative from Modern Shelter by providing end solutions for all stakeholders. And when we talk about the three aspects of life, the three necessities of life, we'll talk about food, shelter, and security. Well done. So let's look at Islamic mortgage financing. Looking at Islamic mortgage financing for affordable housing, like getting low-cost housing for individuals. How can diminishing musharaka products be deployed to solve the issue of housing deficit in Nigeria?
Well, I think the diminishing musharaka product has been used already by Jais Bank, Sterling Bank, who are the pioneer Islamic banks, to create mortgages, because it's essentially a mortgage product. It's an Islamic finance mortgage product. So we've created billions of naira worth of mortgages already using the diminishing musharaka. It is something that is very similar to hire purchase, where a customer buys.
How does it work for individual or corporate institutions?
Yes, so for individuals and corporate institutions, the same. It's similar to hire purchase. You bring your equity contribution, say 10% of the price of a house, and then you pay over an agreed period of time between 10 to 20 years. So with each payment, you get more ownership in the asset until you finish paying for the asset. It's almost very similar to the conventional lease. The only difference being that this is not interest-based. It's an asset-based transaction. There's a property involved, and the ownership of the property is transferred in bits over the period of time, to the client according to the payments. So it's a very transparent product. It's very easy to understand, and it's less risky also for the financial institutions, because the ownership is never completely transferred to the client until he finishes payment. And then also for the client, you can see your payments and you can see the increase of your ownership into as you make payments. So it's a very good product for mortgages. It's actually the best mortgage product out there for Islamic finance.
Islamic mortgages are becoming very popular amongst Muslims and other institutions. So has Modern Shelter in any way used musharaka or ijara sukuk for any housing project in Nigeria?
Well, we're getting there, because to issue a sukuk, you have to go through a lot. There's a lot of registration with SEC. and other things, that are involved. But we have used other Islamic finance instruments like Ijara. We have used the Murabaha product. We have used the Wakala. We have used the Istisna. We work very closely with Jais Bank, Taj Bank, and even other non-bank Islamic, non-bank financial institutions that have Islamic products like Cardinal Stone, like Infinance Wealth Management, with all, and even Noran Baga Financial Services. So even people that don't typically do Islamic finance transactions, when we talk to them, we try to structure Islamic-based transactions with them, and we have been successful so far.
Wow, well done. So let me ask you, what is your assessment of the current national housing project by the federal government, and how can the private sectors, players like you, be incentivized to support affordable shelter for the nation?
Well, like I said, the government is trying, and I always say it that the government cannot do everything by itself. Government can only provide land, can provide favorable policies and access to finance to private sector developers to take on the mantle to see, well, housing is not all about Lagos, Abuja, or Port Harcourt. If you go to Maiduguri, there are people living there. If you go to Zamfara, people are living there. If you go to Ibadan, you go to, Ilorin, everywhere, and all over the country, there are people living there that need shelter. So it's people in those locations, developers in those locations, to come up with viable business plans, that can fit into the government's policies, so that they can leverage on what the government has made available, and then build for their own communities. You don't expect the federal government to come down to every nook and cranny of the country to build, even though they're trying in almost every senatorial zone now. There are housing projects going on. It is actually the job of developers, businessmen, private sector, to come up with these projects and then leverage on the finance available from agencies like family home funds to provide housing in their localities where they are, because the house that I will build in Lagos is different from the needs of the people in Enugu. So it takes somebody from Enugu to know the environment there, to package a viable business plan, that would require funding for him to build and sell to people around there. So we need more local content. We need to challenge ourselves. We need more people to come into real estate, entrepreneurs, that will see the gap and come up with innovative solutions to actually bridge this gap.
Exactly. There is urgent need to stimulate the players in the housing sector in order to reduce the widening housing deficit in Nigeria. Let's look at 2022. 2022 promises to be an interesting year, particularly key sectors and the non-Islamic finance sector or the non-interest finance industry in Nigeria. So what is the outlook for non-interest finance instruments addressing social issues like housing in Nigeria and Africa as a region?
Well, I think there's a huge appetite for non-interest financial instruments, as we witnessed a record-breaking year in 2021. All the sukuks issued by the federal government were massively oversubscribed. There are a lot of also private sukuk issuance which were also massively oversubscribed. It shows the acceptance of the mainstream market of the federal government, of the sukuk as an instrument. I remember not more than 4 or 5 years ago, not a lot of people have even heard the word sukuk, and there was a lot of skepticism within the market players as to whether or not it is even needed or whether it's useful. So I believe that we'll probably see maybe even double the issuances that were in 2021, in 2022, because of the acceptance and the fact that people now know that they can structure sukuks around their projects. So it will continue to play a very, very important role, in infrastructure financing. When you talk of infrastructure financing, housing is definitely there as one of the key sectors that can attract this funding. The key challenge is for us, again, the developers, to come with transactions that are viable, transactions that are bankable. transactions that investors can put their monies in, because I mean there are other options for them to put their monies in.
All right, in a nutshell, to wrap up this conversation. So, Mr. AbdulMalik, you're an expertise in this key sector, like real estate sector. So, would you prefer conventional financing to non-interest finance to address housing deficit in Nigeria?
Well, I mean, for financing, we have to be very careful here. It is not an issue of preference. For us, in the Islamic world, we feel that Islamic finance is an alternative, right? And it's something even complementary, because this is a country where today we need to deepen our financial market. We're nowhere near South Africa or Egypt, or even these are other sister African countries. So it is not an either or. It is a situation where we need to get the two markets, conventional and non-interest, to work together. We can't afford to say either or. So for me, we're going to continuously look for ways that we can bridge between the two sides, so that we can actually get more capital and do good for our people.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. AbdulMalik. Thank you very much for speaking with us on the Islamic Finance Weekly. We appreciate your intervention.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Have a nice day. Investing in housing is a strategic way to stimulate economic activities. This is one sector that creates jobs and has the potential to reduce poverty in developing economies like Nigeria. It is instructive for the government, especially at the subnational level, to create an enabling environment through land reforms that covers titling and improved access that can catalyze economic growth in the country. And that will be all for today. Thank you for watching and following the Islamic Finance Weekly. See you next week Friday for another episode. Bye.